Welcome. Please take your seats and silence your cell phones. Our program is about to begin. Welcome. Please take your seats and silence your cell phones. Our program is about to begin. Please welcome to the stage, Sophie Barron.
Hi everyone, good afternoon and welcome back to Story Studio. My name is Sophie Barron and I'm honored to be your host for today. I already see so many familiar faces in the audience. You know, we spend a lot of time talking about the kind of world we're leaving to future generations, and rightfully so. There's a lot we could do better, and that's why we're all in this room today. I think it's easy to forget that the young people of today already feel the weight of what's to come on their shoulders, and what's happening right now isn't theoretical for us. We know the problems we're set to inherit, and it's impacting us right here, right now. In a study from last year, a third of Gen Zers rated their overall mental health as bad. And I'm sure that stat is not surprising to anyone in this room. Research shows that guns, climate change, racial inequity, and lack of access to mental health care are major sources of stress, anxiety, and depression. But on the other hand, the good news is that young people aren't retreating from having these conversations. In fact, they're the ones starting them. 87% of Gen Zers are comfortable talking about mental health. And if anything, this is a generation that stands up and uses their voices to fight for the changes that they want to see. And this is why I'm so passionate about this topic in particular in starting these conversations with young people at the helm. If all generations committed to empowering young people to create the future that they want to see, to put the power into their hands and actively participate in these conversations together, we would all be on the right path. So today, we're about to hear from an incredible collection of people who are working to address some of the most pressing challenges facing the 1.8 billion adolescents alive today. And we're going to be doing so by centering their unique experiences, voices, and needs. I'm so excited to be starting off today's session by introducing a trailblazer who's been fighting for the health and well-being of young people for decades. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, as well as the board chair of PMNCH, the Right Honourable Helen Clark.
Well, thank you, Sophie, and good afternoon, everyone. And we all gather, as Sophie implied, to commit to the well-being of our world's 1.8 billion adolescents and young people, a generation with so much potential, but also one facing a lot of challenges. It's a generation which is both impacted by and troubled by the climate crisis. It's growing up in a polarised world, and often in countries which are very polarised too. It's a generation that's lived through a global pandemic. It's a generation that sees the disruptive impact of technological change in our lives. All of these bring new challenges, not least that increased risk of mental health issues, as Sophie just referred to, more exposure to gender-based violence, including in the cybersphere, and deepening poverty for many. These are all impacting young people's health and well-being and will shape their futures and those of generations to come. These 1.8 billion young lives make up just over a fifth of our world's population. Yet so often we don't hear their voices in the decision-making processes shaping their lives. With just 7 years left until that target date for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, we need some urgent action to deliver for every adolescent on that agenda. So what can we do? Well, first and foremost, countries have to prioritise adolescent health and well-being in plans and strategies and allocate specific funding for that. We see that between 2003 and 2015, only 1.6% of development assistance for health was dedicated to adolescent health, despite its obviously critical importance. We have to do better, and the costs of underinvestment are very high. As well, we must recognise the intersectionality of adolescents. They are not a homogeneous group. They have diverse needs and identities, and they must be supported accordingly. But our work can't stop there. We need to advocate for new adolescent and youth-focused indicators to measure progress on the SDGs. And to achieve the goals and indicators we set, we need strong global partnerships. I chair, as was said, the Partnership for Maternal, Newborn and Child Health, PMNCH. We have more than 1,450 partners now from across the UN member states, all committed to working across sectors and engaging with the voices and ideas of young people. We have a very active adolescent and youth constituency, which has supported us to ensure the meaningful engagement of young people in our work. And we were pleased to support the development of the Global Consensus Statement on meaningful adolescent and youth engagement. Our board also voted unanimously to include young people in leadership positions across our structures, including by creating a new board vice chair seat for a young person. And overall, more than 20 of our leadership seats are earmarked and remunerated for young people. We're proud of our commitment to intergenerational partnerships. The major PMNCH initiative this year is the 1.8 billion Young People for Change campaign. It is gathering the voices of over 1 million adolescents and young people, and it is mobilising financial and political support for adolescent health and well-being in the lead-up to the Global Forum for Adolescents to be held online on the 11th and 12th of October. The commitment of the private sector and philanthropic foundations to adolescent well-being matters a lot. Both can play pivotal roles by investing in initiatives which promote adolescent health and well-being and by creating safe spaces for young people to thrive. As well, by integrating well-being practices into operations, the private sector and philanthropy contribute to our society and foster, in the longer run, a healthier and more productive future workforce. When the private sector and philanthropy prioritise adolescent well-being, you inspire others to join the cause. That catalyses more action and meaningful multi-stakeholder partnerships. So, commitment here today to adolescent health and well-being is not just an option, it's a necessity. With resources, expertise and influence, we can amplify our efforts, and together we can help secure the health and well-being of those 1.8 billion young lives and enhance the future for all of us. Thank you for being here.
Wow, thank you so much, Helen, for those remarks. I want to highlight something that you said, which is the snowball effect, the ripple effect. Giving voice to one young person could create exponential change. So thank you for the work that you're doing to create those spaces for young people and giving us that voice. And now let's hear from some of those 1.8 billion young people who are really impacting this issue head on. This is going to be our Adolescent Wellness Showcase. So I'm going to introduce our speakers, and then you'll get to feel the magic of the amazing work they're doing. So first, I'd love to introduce Gitanjali Rao, who is an inventor, author, social activist, and STEM advocate. Welcome, Gitanjali. And next up, I'd love to introduce Jackie Shess, who is the founder and CEO of Generation Mental Health. And lastly, I'm thrilled to introduce Oliva Nalwada, who's the youth ambassador for the FIA Foundation and the Child Health Initiative. Welcome to the stage. And now I'll turn the microphone to them.
Got to adjust this for my height. Does that work? Yeah. Perfect. First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, and thank you for that incredible introduction. And it is an honor to be featured among two other incredible women who I know I will look up to for years to come as well. My name is Gitanjali Rao. I'm a student. I'm a freshman in college, and I am thrilled to be here today. But before I kick anything off, I wanted to start out with a story that's very personal to me. One of my friends, one of the students that I've worked with for a couple years now, her name is Elizabeth, and she lives in the Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya. And she carries the same passion, the same drive, and the same initiative that I do when it comes to innovation, science, and technology. But Elizabeth has to walk 45 minutes every day to get to class. She has to look for clean water to drink, and she doesn't have internet access anywhere around her. But Elizabeth is one of just hundreds and thousands of students across the world who face similar challenges that I've had the opportunity to work with as well. And the reason that I bring this up is that youth well-being and adolescent well-being is different in every different aspect that we look at it. It's different for you, it's different for me, it's different for everyone on the stage, and we need to recognize that as different areas that we need to approach and we need to take the next steps towards. Now, when I look at it, I've really approached it in three different areas. First, I've looked to build an anti-cyberbullying service that teenagers can use to address that mental health problem as well, which I'll get to in a second. The second thing that I've been able to look at is implementing a K-12 innovation curriculum for students all across the world to be able to take that next step and have that support system and that fostering that each and every child deserves as well. And last but not least, look at how we can implement furniture, Wi-Fi, basic resources, and these simple things that prove the next step is possible for some of these students. But for the first point that I wanted to start this out with is our school faced a shooting in May of 2019. And a lot of where that was coming from was through this underlying idea of bullying, which has no real cause, no real reason towards it, other than someone wanted to assert dominance over someone else. And due to that, I was inspired to create something called Kindly. What started out as a prototype is now a UNICEF digital public good that uses artificial intelligence to be able to detect and prevent cyberbullying messages. So I like to think of it as the spell check of cyberbullying, and it's available for anyone to use, and more importantly, it's a tool made by a teenager for a teenager to give everyone that second chance. Thank you. Along with that, I've had the opportunity to run innovation workshops for students across the globe and have impacted about 76,000 students across 45 countries and 6 continents, and still counting. And the goal is that each of those students are able to carry their passion forward just like I did. And last but not least, I'm looking to support more and more students who have that same passion, that same mindset, and that same growth by providing them the resources that they deserve. And according to the World Health Organization, 1 in every 5 adolescents between the ages of 10 to 19 have gone through a mental health disorder. And due to that, that's my perspective on well-being, that everyone's problems are different from everyone else's, and we need to be able to take that next step to approach every single one of them. So I want to leave all of you with a couple call to actions that hopefully you can take away with you. 1, listen to youth. Listen to kids just like me. We have new ideas, we have novel ways of thinking, and we have ways we want to grow upwards as a community. And it's important to bring that to life. 2nd, believe in youth. Every single child that you meet honestly is much more than what's on their phone, right? And we've created this new perspective as to every child lays and lives in this world of social media. And whether it comes to TikTok or Snapchat or Instagram, applications that I love and use, it's incredibly important to believe in their cause, their power, and what they're doing to change the world for the better. And last but not least, and most importantly, support and mentor them, right? I wouldn't be up on this stage today if it wasn't for the adults in my life who gave me that opportunity to think differently, to learn things. And I'm proud to say that I'm up here because I've failed more times than I've succeeded. And people have let me do that. So it's important to really, really drive that growth mindset as well. But saying all of that, each and every one of us have the power to change the world. Each and every youth have the power to change the world. And as we heard earlier too, changing the world and innovation isn't an option anymore. It's a necessity. And we each need to take those next steps and prove our responsibility towards making that happen. Thank you for your time.
In March of 2019, I was in Italy, presenting research on suicide prevention at a conference on mental health policy. The day before the event, I made my way to its location, a magnificent building built in the 12th century. I eagerly got my materials and sat down on a stone bench to learn about the other attendees and the agenda for the week. As I sat there, I was hit by a staggering realization. I was the only person presenting research on a country in the global south. There were only a handful of people here who were from outside of the US, Europe, or Australia. And I would go on to learn that I was the youngest person at this event by far. This was a turning point for me. I had struggled with my mental health since I was a child, so I always knew I wanted to do something to move the needle on this issue. But at this event was where I had the preliminary idea for what would become Generation Mental Health, the organization I now lead with young people from around the world. What I've learned is that the field of mental health has been top-down, where privilege and oppression determine whose symptoms are taken seriously, what research is funded, and what types of solutions are deemed legitimate. My friends who are youth of color or LGBTQ are more likely to have unmet mental health care needs. And the situation in the Global South is even more stark, where 90% of youth mental health care needs go unmet. Despite the large majority of young people living in these regions, less than 5% of mental health research funds go to the Global South. What this means is we are failing the large majority of young people by not investing in the solutions that are most likely to address their needs. We can't just take solutions from the West and parachute them into the global South. We know that this doesn't create good outcomes. And this means you won't find the solution to the youth mental health crisis in academic journals or even in rooms of international development and global health experts. Where you will find those solutions is on the ground with the young people who are experiencing these challenges firsthand. My organization, Generation Mental Health, or GenMH for short, is a youth-led nonprofit building a generation of leaders in mental health. We believe that young people know best what will work for them and their peers. So we go directly to them and help them develop the research, programs, and policies that they know will improve the mental health of their communities. It is our mission to elevate the voices of young people with lived experience in order to disrupt inequitable power dynamics and enable those closest to the issue to take action. One of our current programs, the University Mental Health Fellowship, works directly with university students to help them develop, implement, and evaluate a mental health project on their campus. We are currently working with 5 students from 3 continents, one of whom is a 23-year-old student at Egerton University in Kenya. She is training university students to be able to deliver group support sessions to their peers and to local high school students, in addition to running psychoeducation workshops for their community. Her work is a great example of the dedication that young people have to helping their community build the tools to support each other. There are so many other young people like her, but they need the support and the resources in order to scale their impact. So I stand before you today and actively call you to take part in the solutions to the youth mental health crisis. Go directly to young people, support them, and take them seriously. Young people around the world are passionate and ready to take action to improve the mental health of their communities. Youth-led organizations around the world are doing the work, but they don't necessarily have the mentorship, the resources, the funding in order to scale their ideas. So I challenge you to think about how you're engaging with young people. Are you inviting them to more than one-off consultations and cursory advisory meetings? Are you bringing them legitimate sources of support that will enable them to take the lead on mental health solutions? After all, going directly to young people as partners and drivers in this work is the way forward to ensure good mental health for all. Thank you.
Thank you. So today I'm here to talk about a man-made epidemic. A man-made epidemic that claims more than 1.3 million lives every year and leaves more than 50 million injured. A man-made epidemic that is the #1 killer of young people aged 5 to 29 globally. A man-made epidemic that claims lives of 500 children every 24 hours. A man-made epidemic that's costing countries up to 7% of their GDP annually. And most importantly, a man-made epidemic that we have the power to change. Road traffic crashes, injuries, and fatalities. We have designed a transport system that's killing our dreams. A transport system that is more concerned about the comfort of steel and metal as opposed to the lives of children and adolescents. Earlier this year, one of my best friends, Diana, lost her sister. She was called Sharon. She was 14 years. And everyone kept saying, we didn't see this coming. But come on, what chance does a 14-year-old stand against 3,000 pounds of steel? We have designed 100-kilometer-per-hour roads in school zones, and we still say we want education for all. We have 2 million young children missing school due to road traffic crashes. As a youth ambassador for the FIA Foundation, for the last couple of months, I've been supporting governments and young people across Africa to develop commitments on adolescent well-being. And this involved convincing governments to meaningfully engage young people in these processes, but also empowering young people through trainings to conduct peer consultations about their key issues that they face in communities. And the concern of so many young people is that stakeholders, you, our leaders, are doing just a little bit to get a participation trophy. They refuse to believe that this is the best you can do. And they want more than promises. They want real action. They want you to go beyond saying you're going to do it to actually doing it. We are calling upon you to join us as the FIA Foundation in scaling up evidence-based initiatives that are saving lives in school zones such as Sasai, but as well as advocating for sustainable mobility. Road safety is not just a transport issue. It's a health issue. If you look at the burden of road traffic crashes on the health sector, you'll be overwhelmed. It's an education issue. SDG 4, we can't talk about education for all without considering how children are getting to and from school. We are building big schools only for children to die on their way to school. We can't talk about climate action without considering the impact of the transport sector on the greenhouse gas emissions. So we need to act together to change. We need cross-sector collaboration to ensure that road safety is mainstreamed as a key issue in adolescent health and well-being. We need you to join the Global Youth Coalition for Road Safety in putting young people at the forefront in addressing the #1 killer of young people globally. We need you to collaborate further. Create spaces where we have different voices at the same table. We need you to design the transport sector with the most vulnerable in mind. And I'm talking about women, I'm talking about persons with disabilities, I'm talking about children and adolescents. We need sustainable mobility, we need sustainable cities, and most importantly, we need to say enough is enough and finally act. I hope you care enough to change the way you move from today. I hope you care enough to invest more in long-term sustainable mobility, and I hope you care enough to mainstream young people as key voices in addressing the #1 killer of young people. Thank you.
Please give it up one more time for Gitanjali, Jackie, and Oliva. Those are amazing.
How can young people be involved in a way that is uniquely theirs? Like literally, there's no other age group that can fulfill that particular function.
In my vision of the future, I see a world where every young person is empowered to flourish. I envision a future where the well-being of adolescents is at the forefront of sustainable development efforts.
Exploration, creativity, looking at our assumptions and questioning our assumptions is a role that you need.
I always say this, that people with lived experience should also be involved, included.
Your silence is too loud. Can you not hear the 1.8 billion voices wailing in your ears? Haunting your boardrooms and parliaments for space. And your eardrums dare remain numb? You may call us delirious, but this derision will remain loud and proud. I mean, what's expected of renegades who never saw the light of day in their mental health? Shackled in exclusion and bureaucracy, and you still expect me to sit back and honor the status quo?
The future is definitely uncertain, but hey, we can collectively shape the future we want to see.
Sir Speaker, listen, for once, I would like to speak in my own voice, for my own people, for my own rights, paint the world in digital young blood, young queens and young kings, breaking barriers of exclusion, breaking barriers of climate change, breaking barriers of gender inequality, breaking barriers of pseudo-representation, because these voices cannot be contained by the barricades of the former age. Shh. Your noise is too quiet.
How's everyone doing? Good? A little pulse check? This is an incredible session, and I hope that now we can turn it into a conversation. So I'm thrilled and honored to introduce our panel, and I wanted to introduce something, if you don't mind. If you hear something on this panel or throughout the rest of the session that resonates with you, feel free to give some snaps. You know, this is a room for all of us, and I want every single person in this room to be a part of the conversation. So without further ado, let's move into the portion of our session where we're going to talk about partnership and collaboration, because a lot of what we've heard already is that this work cannot happen alone or in a vacuum. So without further ado, I'd first love to introduce Camilla Della Giovanpaola, who's a PhD student in International History and Politics at the Geneva Graduate Institute. Next, I'm thrilled to introduce David Imbago, who's the director of the Yield Hub, as well as a board member of PMNCH. And lastly, I'd love to welcome Vicky Aridi, who's the program manager of YEO 2030 at Making Sense International. Okay, hi everyone.
Hello, Sophie.
I am so excited to dive into the work that each of you are currently doing to impact the landscape of adolescent well-being. So I guess, starting with you, Camilla, what catapulted you into this space to begin with?
Yes, so thank you so much, and hello everyone. So prior to starting my doctoral research journey, I used to work for a philanthropic advisory firm. And it was great, you know, you would see a lot of philanthropic organizations come in and really wanting to bring about change. At the same time, what was quite evident was the lack of collaboration. And what this led to was that there were resources that were available that wanted to cater to the communities that these organizations wanted to serve, but it's just, they were being wasted. And so at the same time, what was going on was, as all of us, I'm sure, know, was the rapid advancement of artificial intelligence and all of the different technologies that have been developing in the last few years. And so I was like, how can we use these technologies for good and enhance collaboration? And so that's how it all started. And then I had the opportunity to become a CGIU fellow. And that's really what started my journey. And I'm very grateful to be here today.
I'm grateful that you're here as well. And I think you bring up something so important that, AI and these new technologies, they're not going anywhere, so we need to learn how to embrace them for good. Yeah. Vicky, what about you? What brought you into this adolescent well-being space?
No, thank you for that. I mean, for me, it's baffling that it's 2023 and we're still talking about adolescent health and well-being. There should have been so much progress made by now. So I really think that's what got it started. Just looking at the time, the year, and the progress that we need to make. And then really looking around on the linkage towards that and sustainable cities. Because as many of us know, by 2030, 60% of the population in our cities will be young people who are under 25. So how are we preparing our cities? How are we preparing them for young people? And really on two dimensions. The first one is on mental health. And really that's why I decided to work with Making Sense International, because as part of their programming, trauma-informed approaches are mainstreamed, which is critical for those young people and adolescents in conflict. The second thing, we can't talk about mental health in a siloed approach. We need to think about it also from the skills lens, because if young people don't have the foundational skills, the future-proof skills, then we're really not talking about the full spectrum, and that's how I got into it.
What type of skills do you feel young people really need in 2023?
I mean, that's a good question. Young people need, first of all, the foundational skills. I know we like talking about the skills of now, but we can't start talking about green and digital when 100 million children don't have access to numeracy and basic literacy skills. We have to start from there. And then really now looking at the green and digital skills. And the green and digital skills, particularly the green skills, I think it's interesting to bring to the conversation the Green Jobs for Youth Pact, which is a very powerful partnership by UNICEF's Generation Unlimited, ILO, and UNEP, and really as part of the pact, really focusing on how can we ensure adolescents have access to climate education mainstreamed in their curriculum and can take action, and really ensuring that also young people have the soft skills that they need.
Thank you. And what an important reminder where you started with your remarks, that today it is kind of surprising that we're still having this conversation about adolescent health and well-being, and we have to start with those skills. And I think something that gives me hope is that at the very least, young people are starting the conversations like we're having today. And David, I think you know this already, but research has shown that Gen Z is much more comfortable having conversations about mental health as well as sexual and reproductive health than older generations. So I'd love to hear more about the work that you're doing, David, and how can we support young people in breaking more of these stigmas?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, Sophie. I would also extend these topics to, for example, climate change, mental health, and all the other sensitive issues that we often refer to. I think that it is amazing to see that these are the actual priorities of young people, which is now 1.8 billion young people in the world, as you might have seen from the session title. I think that that really reflects on how important this topic is right now. And I always refer to this number because it is a huge amount of people who will benefit from a better world where we are supposed to live. When it comes to what is needed to support this agenda, which for me is the real people agendas, to improve and to get this to policies and to legislation, I think that for me, usually the response is resources. It's resources, it comes to financial resources, human resources, technical assistance, because young people are doing a fantastic job in these topics, in mental health, like Vicky was mentioning, climate change, and you see the strikes that are happening. There was a huge march yesterday here in New York on climate change. So you can see the power that young people have to mobilize themselves. with very, very, very little resources, but we do have a lot to say and a lot of capacity just through the passion that really fuels our advocacy. So my first ask is always resources, and when it comes to resources, I think that one place that is really assembling or compiling everything is the Global Forum for Adolescents and the 1.8 billion campaign, because it is aligning resources, is mobilizing resources into one concrete agenda, which is the Agenda for Action for Adolescents, which is led by young people and for young people.
Wow. And I'm glad you brought up resources, because I know this conversation is really centering around collaboration and support. And I think there's a range of support, right? It can be financial support, all the way up to what Gitanjali said with mentorship. So Camilla, what does support and collaboration look like in the work that you do?
Yes, so I think partnerships and collaborations are key. And I think as we are seeing, the world is just getting more complex, right? From the climate crisis to a growing population and to the rise of armed conflicts. And at the same time, there's more and more actors who are joining the stage, right? Who are coming in and who want to bring in their resources and their knowledge to make a change. And the added value of partnership is really synergistic. So in other words, when you bring together diverse stakeholders, their output will be greater than their individual actions. And even the UN in its partnership guidebooks defines this as collaborative advantage. However, I do think that there is a big bottleneck still to this day for the creation of collaboration and partnerships. And I think it's because there's not enough communication on the different activities that are being carried out. And this is something that I believe digitalization can really improve. If it's leveraged in the correct ethical way, it can really bring to the stage, it can act as a kind of, I like to think about it as a kind of navigator, right? So it's gonna group together, classify. You can also use AI systems like natural language processing to really help you visualize and identify the different strengths, right, of the different partners and what we can learn from one another. And so I'm a big believer in partnerships. I think, however, that these need to be well-defined, and whilst on the one hand, it's great that we have many actors entering the stage, I think it's also important that the way in which these actors are aligned is done in a strategic and also mindful manner, because we all know that we all want to bring about positive change, right? But we have to be very mindful of how we do so and just make sure that we are taking the environment into consideration. Absolutely. But thank you for that question. That's
of course,
great.
Thank you for your answer. And Vicky, on the flip side, what do you feel is missing currently when it comes to support, collaboration, and partnerships?
No, thank you for that question. And when I look at collaboration and partnerships, one thing that's glaring even in this space is the siloed efforts. We seem to be all running in our different directions and parallels, but really, how can we come together, leverage our collective resources? And then the second thing is really around meaningful partnership with young people as stakeholders. I think it's one thing to say we are the mouthpiece or advocates, but really bringing young people in their diversity, in their intersectionality, and their whole self, and being able to shift the power dynamics to ensure that they are able to participate meaningfully. And just touching on that, I think that's something really at YO 2030 initiative that we have seen has worked when you bring different stakeholders together at the table and bring them to learn and share from each other. There's that opportunity to share our perspectives and really move forward. So the last thing would be, even as we are in these spaces, how do we create a space to share best practices so that we don't replicate the same mistakes and really scale our collaborative efforts?
It's amazing. And it's what Jackie shared too, right? It can't just be bringing young people in on a one-time basis. It has to be longer and more sustainable to have our voices heard. David, tell me about what you do in the face of adversity in the work that you do. Who do you turn to, and where do you go for help in those moments?
Yeah. That's a great question, and this is a great follow-up from Vicky's response as well. I'm really following up a lot on you. But I think that at work, my main area of work is youth participation as well. So when you ask me who do I reach out for support, I would say to all the different stakeholders who are working in the field right now, in the development field at large and also in the field of reproductive health and rights, especially, which is my area of work. I think that what we are doing right now when it comes to reaching solutions that are sustainable, because like you mentioned, it's not a one-time thing that we have to do, it's something that should be on the long-term thought. It's really bringing together all the stakeholders that need to be involved, the funders, the researchers, the advocates, the implementers, the INGOs, the grassroots organizations, into the same space to learn together how to do youth participation meaningfully. Because I think that I have heard so many analogies about the seat at the table, bring your folding chair, paint the room in the chair, whatever. I mean, there are so many things that I think that we have to go beyond that phase into saying, okay, we are in the room together. We have achieved that for most areas of work, at least. Of course, we have to go beyond tokenism, exploitation, and all those bad sides. But when we are at least at the neutral level, we should go, okay, beyond that. And face with a lot of humility, saying, we don't know how to do this, maybe. But you might know Tofi, you might know Vicky, you might know Camila. You're coming out from these different backgrounds, and to bring your expertise into something that is, we all have the same motivation to do youth participation meaningfully, but we don't know how to, but we might find a solution together to do that. And that's what we do at the ILHA, for example. We bring together different partners to learn together through an action-oriented approach where you have to find a solution for the issue that you are tackling and actually implement this in the end.
That's great. And I want to turn to our two Gen Zers on the panel today. So Vicky, Camila, I'd love to ask you this question. You know, we're hearing so much today from our speakers that really addressing adolescent well-being is no longer a nice to have, it's a must-have. So what message do you have for those in the room who maybe are from older generations? Why should they care about this issue, and where can they actually start taking action?
Okay. Well, I think definitely, Gen Z is also the future generation coming into the workforce, right, at the present moment, bringing its ideas, bringing the change it wants to make. And it's also Gen Z is going to play a pivotal role in also the drafting and later on the implementation of the new generation of SDGs, right? So after 2030, we will have the new generation of SDGs. And it's just, we have so much to say. We are living in such an interconnected digital world. We have access to information in an unprecedented way. And I think what's at the core of this generation is really the fact that we have at our disposal a number of tools to independently voice the change we want to see. And sometimes this can be seen as somewhat also threatening, the fact that we're so loud. But I think on the contrary, it should be seen really as our competitive advantage, to tie it back to what I was saying before. So there's just a lot that we can bring to the table. And it's important that we are given the opportunity to bring what we have and to share it.
Now, when you talk about Gen Zs, we are troublemakers, but I'll be a good troublemaker today. So really, as the generation that is here now, and we're talking about securing 1.8 billion futures, if you mean it, the simple thing is walk the talk. Beyond these four walls, let these conversations translate into action. I mean, it's very important that we don't just come together, great, tick a box, run across the train, next conference, tick a box. So we have this spreadsheet and we're ticking boxes, but how are we translating it to action? And the second thing is that the reality to achieve this is that investments must be made. That's the reality. And so how are we supporting initiatives that are also being led by young people at the local level, local youth-led organizations who are leading the charge on adolescent and mental health through grants? How are we doing that? That's important to think about. And also, how are we ensuring that young people also have the necessary skills to thrive? And last but certainly not the least, collaborative efforts. We can't do it alone. We need to join forces, and together the sky is just but the limit.
And I love what you said about how action needs to go beyond these four walls. So I'd love to plant a seed for everyone here. I'd love to, if we have time at the end, turn to all of you. You know, what are the concrete, actionable steps that we can all take when we leave Story Studio today to start creating some of these solutions? So think about that. And I'm going to ask our panelists one or two more questions. So David, I'd love to ask you, what is something that we can be doing today, not tomorrow, to really continue pushing these conversations forward?
Yeah. I have to first disagree with Vicky's first point that she was, why are we talking about adolescent health and well-being still? I'm actually glad to say that we're finally talking about adolescent health and well-being as a population. And no, but I agree with your point that, yeah, it's a matter of, it should be done by now. But actually, I'm very happy that we're finally talking about adolescent health and well-being, because for a large amount of time, it has been combined with children usually. Adolescent population. So that means that the needs, the priorities are mixed in a 1 to 18-year-old huge population group, which is, of course, not reflecting. I mean, an 18-year-old is not the same as a 1-year-old, a toddler. So I think that for me, when you say what we need to start doing today, not tomorrow, is talk about adolescence as a period of time that is relevant, that is incredibly important for you as a person that will become an adult, for you as a person that exists right now, because that's also another issue that we often invest in adolescents thinking of, yeah, they will be an adult, you need to invest in them because they will grow up, they will also have children, so you have to invest in them as a parent, which is simply unfair. You have to invest in adolescents because they matter right now as a human person who exists in this planet. I got claps, yes. That's a good one. No, but for example, I mean, for me, it's important to keep talking about adolescents as a population first, then to talk about health, fantastic, but then also talk about well-being, because well-being goes beyond health. It's not only health and nutrition, yes, we have talked about it for a while, but well-being also includes education, agency, resilience, employability, and so many topics that are very important for adolescents as part of society and as part of just their
Thank you, David.
community.
And with our 30 seconds left, if anyone in the audience wants to just shout something out that you think we can all take action on as we leave the room today, feel free to shout it out.
Non-formal education.
Love it. Kindness. Amazing. Any others?
White blades.
Great.
Neuroscience education in high schools.
Love that.
Digital literacy, if I might also add.
Okay, well, if you didn't get to share your answer now, please come up to us after the session so we can keep these conversations going. But for now, please join me in thanking Camilla, David, and Vicky for their incredible answers. Thank you, Sophie. Okay. Wow, this is an incredible conversation. Thank you all for being such an important part of it. There's clearly a lot of action to be done, and I think after today's session, I'm feeling so hopeful about where we're going from here. But for now, it is my great honor to introduce our next speaker, who truly needs no introduction. It is truly my honor to welcome the Vice Chair of the Clinton Foundation, Dr. Chelsea Clinton.
Gosh, that's like the best music I've gotten all day. I guess the moral is to hang out where the young people are. I want to thank you, Sophie, for welcoming me so warmly onto stage. I want to thank all of you for being here and clearly caring so much about our young people's mental and physical and spiritual health and well-being. And I am incredibly excited about this next commitment announcement. And I'm partly so excited because there are so many people to welcome to the stage who are making such dynamic and complementary and important, oh yeah, thank you for the snapping, vital commitments that I know together will have a truly profound and generational impact. And so with that, I'd like to ask the following people to join me on stage. Stefan German of Fondation Botnar. Oh, you can applaud if you want. I saw some of you start to applaud. There is quite a bit that's formal at CGI, but this can be interactive. Nupur Agrawal of MTV Entertainment Group. Tim Diamond of Cotton On. Cynthia Germanata of Born This Way Foundation. Kevin Frey of Generation Unlimited. Her Excellency Toyin Sariki of the Wellbeing Foundation Africa. Sarah Piat of the MTV Staying Alive Foundation. Oh, we got some table banging for that one. I like it. Avi Silverman of the FEIA Foundation. Justin Winters of One Earth. Egla Tina Zing of Goliadoras. Come on up, everybody. I think this is incredibly exciting, and so now I actually will ask you to hold your applause, because I think if you applaud for any one aspect of the commitment, in the best sense, it will be hard to get to the subsequent ones. Fondation Botnar is committing to invest nearly 44 million Swiss francs, that's over $49 million, to improve adolescent health, mental health, and well-being. Among other things, the commitment aims to create safe online environments through digital governance and to encourage young people to be more civically engaged in their communities, online and off. Pivotal Ventures, MTV Entertainment Studios, and Surgo Health are committing to develop a first-of-its-kind youth mental health tracker designed by and for young people to capture data that can be used in policy advocacy to address the complex and tragically growing adolescent mental health crisis around the world. The Cotton On Foundation, in partnership with the Born This Way Foundation, is committing $1.5 million to scale its Kindness in Community Fund, which provides free and accessible mental health resources to young people to 10 additional countries, including Thailand, Hong Kong, Brazil, and Africa. Generation Unlimited and UNICEF are committing to empower young people to take climate action through their Green Rising initiative. This commitment aims to provide volunteer and entrepreneurship opportunities, job skills training, and other resources with a goal to reach 10 million young people by 2025. The MTV Staying Alive Foundation is committing to increase adolescents' access to information about sexual and reproductive health, which we certainly need in this country, gender equity, and contraception through using digital entertainment. It will also connect adolescents and young couples to counseling helplines and facilitate virtual campaigns around sexual and reproductive health and wellness education. The Wellbeing Foundation Africa is committing to increase access to programs around hygiene and sanitation to more than 300,000 students in Nigeria through their Hygiene Quest program, a comic book-style learning tool. Goliadoras is committing to support the emotional and physical well-being of girls through soccer programs in Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, and El Salvador. Their curriculum will focus on helping girls develop critical social emotional skills on and off the pitch. One Earth is committing to support alleviating young people's climate anxiety by creating a global technology platform that will provide social support and information about how young people can take climate action and inspire others to do the same. The FEIA Foundation is committing to make it safer for students in Latin America and Africa to get to and from school. They will advocate for injury prevention measures on roads and streets and raise awareness about dangerous traffic areas through demonstrations and other advocacy measures. The Mari Walua Health Initiative, is embarking on a comprehensive strategy to reduce youth suicide in India over the next 2 years through research, advocacy, intervention, and grant making. This multifaceted approach will focus on young people who who are marginalized because of the way that they identify. I want you now, hopefully, to give everyone on stage a very loud round of applause. I just am incredibly grateful, as I think we heard earlier, there are 1.8 billion adolescent and young people across our world, and in very few places, arguably if any, are they receiving the support and the resources that they deserve. And so I'm so thankful to the people on the stage, and I know the many people who work in the organizations that they represent for giving us yet again more reasons to be optimistic. And it is an incredible honor to thank them all and also to welcome Stephanie Pacheco, New York City's Youth Poet Laureate 2023, to the stage. Thank you all so much.
When the sun rises, we are afraid it might not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid it might not rise in the morning. Audre Lorde. To the children of sunlight, who dread its arrival through rusted metal project windows in fear of what's to come, who are afraid of the danger that lays in the darkness, in the unanswered prayer in the light, resenting the next day of handshaking at the thought of hunger and the worried search of survival. I know the burnt building and the rusted fire escape. I know the stomach growl and thirsty mouth and longing of dawn. I know to believe in the ocean and washing up the impossible. I know us to be children of flame and water, of ashes, who are born for songs like this, who know how to turn ruin into rhythm. We too can be a melody that is proof of resurrection. Those of golden lungs who learn how to breathe in smoke. You are worthy of clear skies. To the children of lucky bets on existing, ancestors who laid it all on the line and crossed it, sprinkled faith in their bodies and held onto it. You were born grasping at the air of we're still here. Child of your kin, of deities of ignition, question of lightning, you who refuse to wash by the wayside, knowing that these shores are yours, that your people's footprint marks this with your name, leads you forward in your step. I still rise with the sun, grown not to be afraid of its light, but to bask in it, to trust the gold it turns our skin, and the promise it keeps that better days will remain on the horizon, and we will be here to experience them. So to the children of sun and light, and ash and hope, be the force that has been passed down onto you. Lay it all on the line and cross it. Keep holding on to the lingers of tomorrow in the air of our block, to each other the way we know how, the threads of hope we wrap our hands in, and the rays that remind us that it isn't over yet, beaming through our rusted metal windows. At least until next dinner, that'll be enough to keep our hands still. We weren't meant to survive, but we're still here. and we keep on. Thank you.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much again to Stephanie, to Dr. Clinton, and to all of our incredible speakers who are up here today. And I also want to extend a thank you to all of you. Thank you for making this not just a panel, but an actual dialogue. I feel like we incubated a lot of good today. And I just want to leave you with a few final words. The world as we know it is constantly evolving, and I hope that we remember that so are the needs of our young people. And we thought of so many ways to take action today, whether it's a simple act of kindness, whether it's ensuring safety in our school districts, whether it's including young people not just in one decision, but in a sustainable long-term solution to the work that we're doing. There are so many opportunities to encourage young voices to be a part of the solution in the world that they're inheriting. So I hope that as we leave today, we continue talking about ways that we can really make that difference together, and ultimately, global change starts with a single conversation. So thank you all so much for being a part of that dialogue today. To Anthony, Lindsay, Andrew, the entire CGI team, and we'll see you at our next session. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for joining this session. Please make your way out of the room and refer to the app for other programming options.